Perfect. I'm Officer for Governance and Social Innovation at ICLEI Europe. We are a network of local governments for sustainability. And I'll be moderating today's meeting. And before we kick off the webinar, just a couple of words about the Capacities Project. We are supporting the EU mission of 100 climate neutral and smart cities by 2030. And we are working mostly at the national level with the national level partners and actors in 15 countries. And we are also working with 6 partners that are kind of associated partners to our project in their countries as well. And the key goal of the project is basically to build or strengthen national support structures for climate neutral cities. We are mostly working in 3 topical areas, let's say. So the first one is, of course, policy and regulation. We are also discussing a lot around financing and funding. So we will also kind of organize more of these types of meetings and webinars for different topics. And the third big theme, let's say, is widely understood capacity building. And here, for example, one of the topics that we wanted to dive into a little bit deeper is the GHG emissions monitoring and reporting exercise. Hence, we are presenting on this topic today. Before I present to you the agenda for today's meeting, just a short information that Capacities Project is basically offering like a variety of different formats and meetings and webinars. So all of them have slightly, different purpose. So just short information, kind of this series that is happening right now. It's capacity building series. As you can see, it has 4 meetings. These are mostly directed to capacities partners that are working, in the 15 countries together with us in the project. And we always encourage them, to bring in a key relevant kind of stakeholders from their national ecosystems to also kind of build these national platforms, national support structures together. The first meeting already happened in March this year, and it focused on climate city contracts. Basically, we were presenting how cities are working with climate city contracts and how the national level can support them, in this process. Today's meeting will be about national level support for GHG emissions monitoring and reporting exercise at the local level. And then we have 2 more sessions as a part of this series, one in autumn on funding and financing, and one in spring on policy alignment across different EU initiatives and programs. We know that there is a lot out there, and probably most of you are already collaborating with many of the initiatives and programs, and you're a part of them. But the question is how to combine all of them in order to help cities on their journey towards 2030 climate neutrality. And without further ado, today's topic is GHG emissions monitoring and reporting for climate neutral cities. How can the national level actors get more involved? And we will be talking about this with our panelists. So I brought my ICLEI backup, so my fantastic ICLEI colleagues, Alice Daniela Torres and Juris Grisans, who are working with me at ICLEI and are working with this topic of GHG monitoring and reporting for years. And Alice Daniela will organize an introduction to the topic, and then we will dive a bit deeper into GHG data management with Juris. Then we will look at different tools and methodologies that cities use to collect and analyze, kind of report climate action. And also we will hear from Dr. Armine Lovell how we can bring in national level to support cities in this endeavor. And then we will have a city perspective first and listen about how this exercise kind of looks like at the local level. What are the barriers? What are the key challenges from Çaklar Tükel from the city of Izmir in Turkey. And then we have two panelists from France presenting from the national and regional perspective how the GHG monitoring and reporting national frameworks works in France. And we have Justine Ledoux and Nadège Ostin. And we will finish with a facilitated discussion. So we will have, like a proper Q&A at the end of the session. So we hope, that you will have a lot of questions to our panelists. This will be your opportunity, to ask them and to discuss maybe also kind of what are your experiences, kind of what do you bring into discussion from your own national context, etc. You should be able to use the chat function. So if there are any questions kind of that you would like to put in there, then feel free to use it. We will take all the questions both from the chat and you can also raise your hand during the Q&A session, ask your questions directly, and just would like to remind you that the session is recorded, so it will be made available for others if they are interested in the topic and yes, want to listen to our conversations today. It is my pleasure to welcome then our first panelist, my colleague Alice Daniela, for the introduction part. Alice Daniela, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Olga, for the invitation, and thank you for the panelists and the different participants. We have around 70 people. It's an amazing number, so happy to be here. So on my side, as Olga said, I've been working for ICLEI almost 5 years in different topics, but especially in monitoring, reporting, and evaluation activities on a city level. Also, for your information, I am part of the monitoring, reporting, and evaluation task group of the European Covenant of Mayors, and I am also following the CDP ICLEI track collaboration in the European level. So today I just wanted to introduce to you why the monitoring, reporting, and evaluation is important on this journey of carbon neutrality of cities and the European mission. So it's important to understand that when we talk about monitoring, reporting, and evaluation, cities face like 3 main challenges or main activities when we talk about it. So first of all is the emissions accounting, greenhouse gas emissions accounting per se, this emissions inventory that the cities have to do every year or every 2 years or 3 years. Then also that the cities use different tools to account emissions, but also to manage these emissions, because one thing is accounting, another thing is advancing on emissions management. And finally, that cities have to face with different reporting platforms and initiatives on a yearly basis, or depending on the initiatives they are part of, they have to report all this work. So when we talk about the cities emissions accounting, of course, cities use different national and international standards, and of course, cities rely on the expertise in the different areas of the municipality, but especially from the climate and environmental departments. But to build the inventory, the cities do need help and need to collect data from different sources internally in the municipality and sometimes outside the municipality. Here I have put some examples of the methodologies that cities use, but we will see that later together with CDP. The most common methodology that cities use is the greenhouse gas protocol for greenhouse gas emissions accounted, the GPC method. And also here in Europe, most of the cities use the CCAV methodology of the European Covenant of Mayors. Those are the most used platforms, but in different countries of Europe, also some cities use their own methodologies, like the BISQUA standard in Germany, or the Bassemis method in France, for example, that we will also hear later. And when we talk about the tools, of course, there are the tools that the cities use are used for emissions accounting per se, for calculating scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, also for target setting, especially now in the new expectations of the European Commission of this carbon neutrality. Cities need to define new goals of emissions reduction in the future. Cities need to develop scenarios and track emissions over time. So there are different tools. Some of them are free, some of them are commercial tools, but there's several options for cities to use when we talk about calculating and managing the emissions over time. And regarding the reporting platform, cities have to report depending on the country that they are. They have to report locally, of course, to the different executive committees of the municipality, but also national reporting sometimes, and in cases, some European reporting too. In general, here in Europe, well, in globally, there are two platforms. The main platform that cities use to report climate action is the CDP Clay Track that we will listen later, where we are part of it, and the European Covenant of Mayors here in Europe, the platform My Covenant. It's important for you to know that when cities report, there is a global agreement within the Global Covenant of Mayors that there's a common reporting framework that cities need to follow when we talk about emissions accounting and reporting. So this common reporting framework is a publicly accessible document that you can see what are the minimum requirements that cities have to report to make a meaningful advance on their climate action planning processes. So if we go to the next slide, also at the same time, we have what countries are doing. So cities are doing their own reporting, but also we know that on a national level, countries also have to report and monitor their emissions on time, mainly with three main goals. Of course, tracking emissions to accelerate actions. Of course, countries have to guarantee the official reporting, especially for carbon-intensive sectors like steel or the electricity sector, for example. The countries also need to prioritize actions to reduce emissions, to allocate resources for decarbonization, and of course to identify opportunities of innovation in sectors that probably they have not identified in the past. And also some countries, especially here in Europe, they require a very robust monitoring, reporting, and evaluation framework to define carbon budgets to decarbonize that economy. We have seen this especially in countries like the UK or in Ireland that have specific carbon budgets defined. They use the emissions data, of course, to define the budgets for different sectors, and of course sometimes facilitate public investments and unlock these investments on a national level. And finally, and one of the most important things that is important to highlight is that within the UNFCCC processes and the national deterrent contribution processes, countries need to account, report, and monitor emissions over time. Depending on the country, they have to meet, of course, national and EU reporting guidelines and requirements. And of course, countries need to prepare and input and align their emissions processes towards the UNFCCC and to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement. So as you can see here, also national governments also face this challenge of a continuous monitoring, reporting, and evaluation, and every year this is getting more and more importance on a national level too. So the question is how cities and countries would work together on this. So if we see the next slide, we can see that currently there is a data exchange between the national, local, and sometimes regional stakeholders, mainly in three main activities. Now, this is to show how these frameworks complement each other. Of course, when we talk about emissions activity data, cities require a lot of information, especially on activity data, to identify relevant emission sources and to build the inventory. So activity data from the energy sector, for example, that sometimes there's no information on a local level, you need to rely on national information. Also data on transportation, agriculture, or industrial activities, for example, that are not in the control on the city. Then the emission factors, and this is one of the main, how can I say, data exchange when we talk about emissions accounting on a city level, because most of the cities rely on national emission factors to build their inventory. So this is a very interesting exchange of data between the national and the local level. And finally, of course, to complement and to track emissions over time and identify opportunities for reduction, also there's an exchange on the sectoral data and also economic data to build specific plans or identify emissions reduction opportunities. There's a need to have core information that sometimes comes on a national level. Socioeconomic data is also important. So, and all this information sometimes comes from the national level, and cities require this data. So, this introduction, and just to finalize the next slide, after hearing of this data exchange between the cities and national level, we need to think of how to move from a simple data exchange or data consultation for a joint cooperation towards a carbon neutrality journey, because on the one hand, the cities want to be carbon neutral, like the cities in the emissions, but also countries are called also to reach net zero goals, reduce their emissions in midterm and long-term horizon. So it's very important to have this. So let's think together today, how can we move to this joint cooperation? And we have wonderful speakers here to discuss this. So I'm happy to do this information, this initial introduction. And now, Olga, I give the floor to Jurgis.
Yes, exactly. I will now stop sharing. Thank you very much, Alice Daniela, for this excellent introduction. And I would invite now Juris to speak more to our topic today.
Yes, thank you, Olga. Yes, hello, good afternoon, everyone. Yes, my name is Juris Grizans. I am Officer in Sustainable Energy Planning and Carbon Reporting in ICLEA, Local Governments for Sustainability Secretariat in Freiburg. And yes, Olga, thanks a lot for kindly inviting me for this important capacity building and also knowledge sharing event. And yes, let me share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it right. Perfect.
Perfect. Yes. So for today's meetings, yes, for today's events, I have prepared a presentation with the title Multi-Level Greenhouse Gas Emissions Data Management. And yes, within my presentation, I would like to start with a brief introduction to the diverse use of environmental and also climate data as well. After that, I would like, yes, together with you to go through this greenhouse gas data management, starting from the European Union level, then to the national level, and of course to the local level as well. And at the end, yes, of my presentation, I would like to give as a good practical examples approach used by the Net Zero City project, specifically to the greenhouse gas data management and support of the cities. And of course, it would be a pleasure to share with you also this knowledge resources produced and also used by Net Zero Cities project with their work of the 112 cities. And so I would like, yes, to start my presentation with a quote once said by the Thorsten Reis. And basically once he said that there is a massive opportunity and need around environmental data. And environmental data is going to influence day-to-day decision-making of everybody. And here we are talking about, be it that you want to know what emissions are like in a potential vacation spot, or that you need to evaluate which policy options really work. And I believe, and I hope that everyone will agree that when we are talking about environmental and when we are talking about climate, greenhouse gas emission data, of course, we are realizing the functional diversity of this data and also how we are using this. And basically, yes, we are talking about that, yes, somehow the uniqueness maybe of this data is predefined by the wide usage, starting from the global level, international level, national, regional, local level from one side, and from other side, of course, ending with individual stakeholders and individual person. And that's why, of course, we could say that current practice also show us that the modern environmental protection and also greenhouse gas emission reduction practice and also climate change mitigation, also adaptation practice is built on how well we understand what is happening in environment, in our surrounding environment, and also what is happening in the natural world as well. And that's why if we move to the next one, of course, I would like to mention that climate change and environmental degradation is an existential threat to Europe and also to the world as well. And that's why to overcome these challenges in 2020, the European Commission approved a set of policy initiatives that we know as the European Green Deal, with the main goal, yes, first of all, to make the European Union climate neutral in 2050, to ensure that this climate neutrality in the European Union has a modern, resource efficient and competitive economy, and of course ensuring that no person and no place left behind. And again, if we are looking maybe in the European Green Deal from the perspective of today's discussion, from the greenhouse gas data management, of course it's important to highlight maybe three aspects. The first of all, there is this need to bring together actors in all their diversity. Here we are talking about, yes, different group of citizens, but also here we are talking about this vertical actors as well. We are talking about national, regional, and local actors and their collaboration. The next aspect, of course, definitely the need to strengthen provision on monitoring and modeling, again, to predict and to prevent maybe negative consequences of the potential climate change. And the last but not least, of course, to ensure access to data, to integrate climate change in as a everyday strategic planning of the local, regional, and national level, and of course, not only planning, but also implementation. The next important aspect definitely is digitalization, digital technologies, and of course, if we are talking about nowadays about data, about greenhouse gas data management, of course, we are linking close to the digitalization. And that's why I would say that basically data and data management closely linked to the greenhouse gas emission reduction, also climate action, are at the heart of the European Green Deal. And that's why, as an answer maybe to meet these needs, currently European Commission has started to work on the European Union Green Deal data space. And basically this data space will be I would say, like a unique environment, unique framework to use the measure potential of data that is currently exists in the different sectors, to bring this data together, to classify, to systemize, to make it more user-friendly and available from one side, and from other side, of course, to ensure the interoperability between these different data space. If we are looking on the greenhouse data management at the national level, of course, I would like to mention that yes, national governments definitely play a key role in the climate action and also in the greenhouse gas emission data management. Because of course, if we imagine even what is the practice shows that even the biggest cities with, we could say maybe with the greatest capacity, with the greatest resources, yes, they could act, and also acting, they could achieve only a limited amount of their mitigation and potential alone. And of course, we realize that half of the urban population nowadays live in a small and medium-sized cities. And therefore, of course, we realize that these smaller urban areas require national framework, require national support even more than the larger cities. And therefore, of course, I would like maybe to highlight that the importance of this proactive guidance from the national governments and also effective partnerships with other level of governments that is crucial, important, and is important precondition to ensure success also in progress of reduction of the greenhouse gas emission and also of successful implementation of the climate action. If we are moving to the next level, from the national to the local level, in order to see this link, to see this bridge, of course, I would like to mention that currently the process of climate neutral and smart development at the local level covers these two areas of activities. And here, yes, we are talking about that. First of all, yes, the first area is the localization of the global, international, national, regional climate initiatives, campaigns, and also objectives to the local level. For example, localization of the European Green Deal from one side, and from other side, of course, we are talking about this protection and development of the local climate values. For example, as a good health, social well-being, natural ecosystems, the quality of life. And yes, basically here we are talking about these two activities, two actions, set of actions. Yes, we are talking about this climate action planning. Together with the stakeholders, we define goals and objectives for the midterm and long-term perspective. And from other side, of course, we are talking about climate action monitoring. Again, trying to answer the question, where we are now, where we would like to be, and basically what is our overall progress there? What are these impacts, direct impacts, indirect impacts, and of course also co-benefits as well. And of course, I would like to mention that as an outcome of this overall process of the monitoring, yes, we are talking about the data reporting, climate action data reporting, including, of course, also greenhouse gas emission data reporting. Of course, there are, I would say, like a set of the different functions, but today, maybe in the context of our conversation, I would like to highlight specifically the climate communication function, provided by the climate action reporting, and also climate decision-making function. Of course, I would like to mention that yes, many municipal tasks relate to areas of action linked to the greenhouse gas emission. Either we are talking about land use, buildings, transport, waste, water facilities, energy resource insurance. And that's why I would like also to say that yes, climate action planning and implementation at the local level is closely linked with functions performed by the local authorities. And thus, of course, is associated also with the greenhouse gas emission based either scope 1, either scope 2, or either scope 3. And that's why, of course, we realize that a complete, transparent national greenhouse gas inventory is as an essential tool for understanding of current emissions and past trends, projecting future emissions, and also identifying sectors maybe for improvement for the cost-effective mitigation. And thus also at the local level, thus also contributing to the national greenhouse gas inventories of the country. The next one, I would like to mention that Net Zero Cities project approach, and also Net Zero City is a part of the European Union Research and Innovation Program Horizon 2020. And basically this project also provide and also operate as a service-oriented platform that support 112 cities that were selected within this European Union mission, 100 climate neutral and smart cities by 2030. And yes, currently cities also has already started their journey towards 2030, towards climate neutrality and smart development. But also in the context of today's meetings, I would like to mention that maybe one of the important tasks that is currently project is working on, and also together with the cities and with all relevant stakeholders, of course, it's development of the comprehensive framework for monitoring, evaluation, and learning activities. And also I would like to mention that, yes, how this framework is built, yes, definitely through the inventory of existing methodologies, through describing the needs and also identifying the needs of the cities for monitoring, for evaluation, for learning as well, and definitely for designing the necessary solution for the cities to meet their needs. And here, as you could see, that the main blocks are definitely, as the cities start with a portfolio of action defining what will the action do from the perspective of emission domains, where this dimension come in each specific city, from the systemic levers, either technology or infrastructure, either social innovation, finance, funding, learning, the need for capabilities, improvement, etc. Of course, maybe from the action trying to define and also identify, but what will the action achieve or change during the maybe short time, middle term, or also long-term perspective. Yes, we are talking about these early changes and also later outcomes. Yes, here we are talking about, of course, also this long-term perspective, what future condition will the action plan set? And of course, as you could see that, yes, this monitoring, evaluation, and learning is an important part, or I would say also as a basis for this action selection, action planning, and also for the future steps, maybe identification. Of course, this part answers the question, how will the action plan's progress be measured? And that's why, of course, also this measurement, monitoring, data infrastructure, tools and method identification, development, digitalization, of course, is crucially important in this overall progress. And of course, I would say, is a bridge between this local level, between regional, and also between the national level as well. And finally, I would like to mention that, of course, maybe one of the important functions of the Net Zero Cities, how to support cities who are participating, how to support all interested parties, either we are talking about regional or national level, of course, is a transfer of knowledge and also capacity development activities. And here, yes, I have included this several links that I believe would be important maybe to look into for today's listeners. Definitely, this is an overall overview of the Net Zero Cities project and approach visiting the Net Zero City website. Definitely, it's recommended to visit the Net Zero Cities results and publication chapter. Specifically, I would say maybe again as a context of today's discussion with the deliverable of the work package 2, impact metrics and monitoring, evaluation and learning framework. And definitely as a third part, I would like to mention maybe it's recommended to use also the Net Zero Cities knowledge repository that cover a lot of I would say maybe online resources, published deliverable resources, different approach, frameworks, tools that cover different topics. Today, I have just included as an example for today's discussion, the governance and policy, tools, methods, approaches, air quality approaches, and also good examples how to work with this topic, and also analytics and modeling aspects as well. And as I have started yesterday my presentation with a quote, I would like also to finish also as a conclusion, as a final remark. And these quotes are the following. When all levels of government utilize their competencies, tasks, budget, experts, contacts, and cooperation partners in a targeted and coordinated manner, they definitely can achieve more together than each actor alone. And the second one, of course, I would like to mention that yes, definitely this collaborative climate action is politically intended, well-organized cooperations across different levels of government to achieve climate goals, and of course, ideally jointly defined and implemented together. So with this, yes, I would like to tell thank you for your attention, and it will be my pleasure, yes, to answer your question and to provide all necessary support. Thank you, Olga. Back to you.
Thank you, Doris, very much, especially for the interesting messages at the end of your presentation that are motivating us, I think, to think and reflect kind of on this topic from different angles. So thank you for that. And now I will invite our next speaker, Dr. Arminel Lovell, from CDP, to present more about the tool and to know about different tools, methodologies, how the cities can report. The floor is yours, and we can see the presentation.
Thanks, Olga.
Perfect.
And can I check, can you see it in full screen?
Yes.
Brilliant. Yeah, so hi everyone. My name is Arminel Lovell and I'm delighted to be here. I'm Senior Technical Manager for City, States and Regions at CDP. And in this next section, I will give an introduction to CDP ICLE Track, which is the reporting platform that we co-host with ICLE, and how cities can report in alignment with national, regional and state reporting frameworks through it. And I will provide an overview of the tools and methods cities can use to collect emissions data and how national governments can help them measure their emissions. Before we get started, for those of you who don't know CDP, we are a non-profit running the world's largest environmental reporting platform. We're focused on helping investors, companies, cities, and states and regions in understanding and effectively managing their environmental impact. We believe that what you can measure, you can manage, and we really believe in the importance of data standardization, transparency, and accountability. Ultimately, we hope that reporting will lead to stakeholders taking urgent action to build a truly sustainable economy that works for people and planet in the long term. So, as I mentioned earlier, CDP ICLE Track is the reporting platform that we co-host with ICLE for cities and local governments to report their climate and environmental data. And in 2022, over 1,000 cities disclosed their data through CDP ICLE Track, with almost 200 of them in Europe. By reporting through CDP ICLE Track's Cities Questionnaire, cities can report against multiple global and regional frameworks and initiatives through the completion of a single questionnaire, making it a one-stop shop for all reporting needs. We are a reporting platform for several initiatives, including the Global Covenant of Mayors, multiple ICLE initiatives, WWF's One Planet City Challenge, and the UN-backed Race to Zero and Race to Resilience campaigns. And since 2022, CDP ICLE Track is an official reporting platform for net zero cities, which Yuris just kindly introduced earlier, and it's fully aligned with the requirements of this initiative. In addition, the platform is aligned with the reporting recommendations of international standards and frameworks, such as the TCFD, the Sustainable Development Goals, and the Global Covenant of Mayors Common Reporting Framework. So the questionnaire is comprised of 5 modules or sections across the areas of governance, assessment, which is where cities can report their emissions inventory data, targets, planning, and actions. And CDP ICLE Track is designed to enable flexible reporting to make it as useful for cities in their specific context as possible. So it's free and voluntary to report, and there is no prescribed methodology. It's available in 7 languages, including English, French, Spanish, and Portuguese, and guidance is provided throughout, and we have a dedicated team available to support cities with reporting. What might be of interest as well to this audience is we also have a government partnership program, which enables national governments and national level actors to use CDP ICLE Track to drive increased quality and quantity of climate and environmental transparency by their cities and local governments. Our system offers city-specific comparable data that can be easily accessed, tracked, and monitored over time. And this can help national governments with tracking and monitoring progress of their economy and climate goals against their national and international goals and commitments. And just quickly, all public cities data reported through CDP ICLE-Track is freely available to download via our open data portal. And our data is used globally by governments, NGOs, intergovernmental organizations, including the UNFCCC's Global Climate Action Portal, private sector, investors, policymakers, and academics. So what tools do cities use to collect and report emissions data? There are a range of well-established tools, which I think Daniela mentioned briefly earlier, so such as Cirrus and ClearPath, Scatter, Snapshot, and Climate OS, which is a tool developed by ClimateView. And these can help cities manage and report emissions inventory data. So many of these tools are kind of designed to help cities collect their own local data and then turn it into an inventory and then set targets and plan actions against it. And cities that use these 5 tools can import emissions data directly into CDP ICLE-Track through our import function. And this functionality enables cities to directly import emissions data into the questionnaire in formats aligned with globally recognized greenhouse gas accounting and reporting standards, such as the Greenhouse Gas Protocol's Global Protocol for Community Scale Greenhouse Gas Inventories, which is otherwise known as the GPC, and the Global Covenant of Mayors Common Reporting Framework. So this significantly reduces the reporting effort for using these questions if cities use this functionality. And we encourage cities to measure and report their emissions data in alignment with the global greenhouse gas accounting standard, because it helps to standardize the data and makes aggregation and comparison of city emissions possible on a global scale. However, we have built flexibility into CDP ICLE-Track, which means that cities can report their data in any format they want, including in alignment with their national, regional, or state reporting frameworks. For cities that are struggling to collect their own local emissions data, we have developed the Greenhouse Gas Emissions Tools and Datasets Guide, which includes a range of tools and datasets that can provide baseline emissions data for cities and best practice recommendations on how to use them. And on the right of the screen is the online interactive part of the guide that cities can use to find relevant tools for them. So cities can select which country they are in the drop-down box marked by the arrow, and this will bring up tools relevant to that country. And the guide also suggests tools that are relevant for the city's stage in its climate journey. So stage 1 is for cities that are establishing an emissions inventory for the first time. Stage 2 is for cities that have an emissions baseline, but are looking to understand the sources of their emissions in more temporal or spatial granularity. And stage 3 is for cities that have a baseline and are taking action and want to start tracking the progress of these actions over time. And so different tools might be useful for cities at different stages along this journey. And then if you click on the thumbnails for each tool, it provides a more detailed tool profile that includes information about the tool, including its strengths, limitations, methodology behind it, emission scopes, and boundary. And the guide also provides best practice recommendations of things cities should consider when choosing a tool or dataset. And these include what methodological approach does the dataset or tool use to estimate emissions. So tools use different approaches to measuring emissions, from local activity data multiplied by emissions factors, which Daniela mentioned earlier, to scaling down data from national data sets, which is also very common, to some tools use direct atmospheric measurements as well. So again, it might, depending on the city's context, they might find different tools useful depending on the methodology used to collect the data. And the guide also asks cities to think about whether the tool's data comes from reliable and robust sources. So we recommend cities use data from publicly available and reputable sources, for example, national government datasets or academic peer-reviewed datasets. And just to let you know, we are aiming to update this guide on an annual basis to ensure that it stays up to date, that we continue to include new tools that come out, and also we know that tools are developing all the time, so to make sure that we've got the latest developments in there. However, even with the availability of tools, our data shows that cities are still struggling to measure their emissions, and this is a barrier to taking further climate action. So in 2021, 38% of cities did not report a community-wide emissions inventory, and the average greenhouse gas emissions inventory reported through CDP ICLE was 3 years old. And the research we did for the guide shows that there are a number of challenges that cities face when developing emissions inventories. And this includes technical know-how and capacity within the data to collect, within the city to collect that data. In some cases, the data exists, but is not publicly available or is held by other stakeholders, for example, other tiers of government or private companies. And in some cases, the data just doesn't exist or is hard to measure. For example, consumption-based emissions, which are emissions resulting from the consumption of goods and services by residents within the city, or, for example, emissions associated with agriculture, forestry, and other land use. So there are a number of ways that national governments and national level actors can help cities measure and report their data. So firstly, by endorsing city disclosure. Government endorsement drives more and better quality city climate disclosure. And by partnering through CDP, governments can leverage their authority to promote voluntary city climate and environmental reporting and action. And you can find a link to CDP government's partnerships website in this slide, where you can view our current government endorsements, including the Netherlands, Italy, France, and Brazil. Secondly, national governments can help by making national level data sets free, public, and easily accessible, and if possible, update them on an annual basis, and also align them with global frameworks and standards, so that it's much easier for cities to get this data and to scale it down to their local jurisdiction. Thirdly, national level actors, if possible, should help to unblock barriers to accessing private data, for example, from utilities and from private companies, so that cities can get a full range of the data. And then finally, where possible, national governments can also support cities to collect some of this hard to measure data, such as consumption-based emissions, agriculture, forestry, and other land use. So yeah, that's it from me. Thanks for listening, and I hope that it has been insightful. If you would like to learn more about our government partnerships program, please do reach out at cities.europe@cdp.net, and I'm looking forward to any questions at the end of the session. Thank you. I'll go back over to you.
Thank you very much, Arminel. It was indeed very, very interesting presentation. Thank you so much. We could learn more about the CDP, but also other, variety of tools that are available for cities that are out there. So thank you very much for that. And let's now zoom in on a topic from the city perspective. And we have with us Çağlar Dukal from the city of Izmir. That is also a city partner or partnering city in the mission of 100 climate neutral and smart cities by 2030. So Çağlar, we would like to hear from your perspective, what are the key challenges and barriers and opportunities also that you see with closer collaboration at the national level, when we talk about GHG emission monitoring reporting exercise. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Olga, and greetings to anyone from Izmir, from a lovely spring-like summer day, neither too hot, neither too cold. This year, we've been fortunate to experience a milder and longer spring season, which is not normal here. Before we delve into the topic, let me introduce myself. My name is Çağlar Dukal. I'm an engineer at Directorate of Climate Change and Clean Energy Department at the Izmir Metropolitan Municipality. Today, I have the opportunity to provide you with a quick overview of Izmir's stance on climate change, focusing specifically on our efforts in emission reporting. As a municipality, we recognize the critical importance of addressing climate change and taking decisive actions to mitigate its impacts. So I will share insights and experiences gained from our work at the municipality. So I will talk about the challenges we face and some of the approaches we adopted and collaborative efforts required to make meaningful progress in emission reporting. Again, I express my gratitude for opportunity to speak at this important webinar. Before we begin, let me give you some background information about Izmir. Izmir is the third largest city in Turkey with a population of nearly 4.5 million. So it is located on the west coast of Turkey, along the eastern shores of Aegean Sea. The metropolitan area boundaries have expanded over time, covering a surface area of 12,000 square kilometers. So in 2014, the metropolitan municipality borders were extended even further to match the provincial borders. So Izmir metropolitan administrative area now spans approximately 200 kilometers from west to east and 170 kilometers from north to south. So this is such a large area poses challenges for the metropolitan municipality, like providing and managing public and municipal services across such a vast area is incredibly challenging. And the city is a blend of urban and rural regions requiring diverse approaches to meet the needs of the different areas. And the economy is driven by diverse sectors as well. Industry sector plays a significant role in Izmir's economic vitality. The city's fertile land supports thriving agricultural practices, and tourism is very also important. So therefore, understanding Izmir's context is important for emission monitoring and reporting. So size, population, economic dynamics shapes the challenges and opportunities. So effective climate action requires tailored strategies to address Izmir's unique circumstances. To set the scene, let me summarize Izmir's climate plans. Izmir has been a leading city in the fight against climate change. In 2016, the city prepared the Sustainable Energy Action Plan. In 2020, Izmir adopted a new commitment to reduce carbon emissions by 40% and prepared a Sustainable Energy and Climate Action Plan, also called CCAP. So Izmir also completed the Green City Action Plan, GCAP, becoming the first city in Turkey to participate in Green Cities program proposed by EBRD. So Izmir has set the bar even higher with the further commitments and challenges, as in 2021, Izmir committed to becoming a net zero carbon city by 2050 with a municipal council decision as a part of the city's Race to Zero campaign. And finally, European Commission has selected Izmir as one of the 112 climate neutral cities, aiming to make the city carbon free and resilient by 2030. Currently, CCAP and GCAP are the Izmir's major plans for achieving its 2030 climate plans. These plans encompasses 61 actions across 11 sectors, including buildings, energy, transportation, waste management, water management, land use, environmental and biodiversity, agriculture, forestry, health, tourism, and governments. So emission inventory, monitoring, and reporting play a crucial role in implementing actions across sectors, especially in mitigation. It allows us to track emissions, identify trends, measure the effectiveness of climate actions. Through comprehensive monitoring and reporting, we can identify sector-specific challenges and implement targeted strategies for the emission reduction. So some numbers from Izmir's emission inventory in comparison to global and national levels. In 2018, Turkish official emissions were reported as 120 million tons, which is approximately 1% of global emissions. Izmir contributes around 25 million tons of carbon dioxide, which is equivalent to almost 5% of Turkey's emissions. And the municipality's own emissions around 2% of all Izmir's emissions. So it's very small. By understanding these figures, we can gauge Izmir's roles in the larger climate context and emphasize the importance of monitoring and reduction efforts. So a sectoral breakdown of emissions is also essential for the understanding challenges and opportunities. For example, industry accounts for 41% of all emissions. As a municipality, we opted out industry sector and aviation sector from the action planning, since municipality does not have any mandates over these sectors. Nevertheless, in our action plans, we have full inventory showing industry shares as well. So by having complete inventory makes industry also aware that they have also big responsibilities and should take actions. It's important for them to know their responsibilities since they will be forced to produce greener products and offer greener services due to additional carbon tax imposed by the European Green Deal. Buildings are responsible almost a quarter of the emissions, and transport is account for 23% of the emissions. The city's emissions provides a guidance not only for the municipality but also the all sectors, showing the total contributions. It helps identify the priority areas, allocate resources effectively, promote collaborations. It helps identify it by understanding sector-specific emissions, for example. We can make more informed decisions. Although there are many individual works in the sectors, in all sectors, I mean, companies also, they're having their own inventories, but city inventory is the only place where all the sectors are shown together and seen by the total contribution. Sorry, the slide may be a little bit busy and complicated, but I will try to summarize it in a simplified manner. And you can see here the sectors and greenhouse shares, as I showed you in my previous slides. Climate action responsibilities and jurisdictions are very complex, and with different levels of government having different roles and areas of the authority. Metropolitan municipalities like ours are responsible for preparing and implementing the climate action plans across various sectors. Climate-related matters are distributed among the metropolitan municipality, district municipality, national level management, and all other stakeholders. For example, in transport, while metropolitan municipality focuses mostly on sustainable transport, such as public transport, like carbon-free mobility, like cycling and walking, transport policies in general are set usually on the national level. Similarly, in the building sector, while cities make the zoning plans and bylaws, regulations related to building characteristics are determined by the national level policies. So as you can see from this table, all green shaded areas indicate where policies, responsibilities, and authorities are dominant. Here, the challenge lies in implementing citywide climate commitments across sectors and jurisdiction. As in many cities, this causes a big pledge performance gap, which is the difference that the local governments are committing in addressing climate change and actual progress achieved in implementing those commitments at the local level. A very effective coordination and cooperation along with this holistic approach is required to overcome jurisdictional challenges and successful implementing climate commitments as well. One thing is for sure, emission monitoring and reporting is the key to establish, maintain a connection between national level and local level. For our experiences, we can conclude these are like some of the benefits that we have already taken advantage so far. Emissions monitoring reporting results in better informed decision making I mentioned before, provide target setting and goal tracking, result in resource efficiency and cost savings. We can see emission reduction opportunities there as well. Enhance accountability. It results in collaboration and partnership with many stakeholders. It provides investor attraction and reputation. And best of all, it provides benchmarking where we can compare ourselves with other cities. But as other speakers already mentioned, we have many barriers as well as a city. We believe many cities will find it very familiar, like lack of sufficient data, especially breakdown of local emission sources, like especially emission factors as well. Insufficient holistic approach on local and national level data integrations, lack of coordination among municipality, public institutions, private companies, and regulatory framework should be reviewed from the climate point of view as well. So basically, from my previous table, municipality does not have all the mandates and responsibilities over all the sectors. And lastly, I want to stress on the areas where the local and national level actors should work together in harmony in order to have more effective and climate action plans and emission monitoring. As I mentioned before, common policy framework is essential to align local and the national level efforts. Data collection and sharing among national, regional, and local entities are very important. Knowledge exchange and collaboration is key to share best practices, lessons learned, and even innovative approaches. We are lucky that as a city, we have expert level of people at the municipality right now, but technical assistant training and capacity building programs for local expertise is very important. Many cities have city level climate action plan, but they have no expertise on monitoring or reporting as well. Small scale cities have lack of funding and resources as well. This is especially important when they hire experts from as consultancy from the outsides. And finally, there should be a standard mechanism for local level progress is evaluated. So thank you for your time and attention. And finally, I invite all of you to visit to see the beautiful and modern city of Turkey. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Glad. It was really interesting presentation, and I really believe that many cities, that we work with and, are talking to, totally understand the same kind of and face the same barriers and challenges. And let's see how we can respond to these challenges by presenting now the national perspective. I would like to invite Nadège Austin to present the national framework for GHG reporting and monitoring in France, how it's structured, how it works. Nadège works for network of regional agencies for energy and environment, and the floor is yours. And if we can see the slide, perfect. Are you muted, Nadège?
Here we go. I was trying to find the button. Hello, everybody. I'm not sure which screen you are seeing. Do you see the full screen?
Yes, full screen and the first slide.
Okay, good. So yes, I'm going to present to you the how it works in France, and I'm not sure if it will answer all the questions that we've addressed today, but maybe just an insight of how we work in France, which is also a real challenge to work in progress every day and building cooperation between local, regional, and national levels in order to have to move forward better reaching the goals for climate change. So in France, we have 15 regional energy and climate observatories So those are structures that are organized at the regional level, and cities and local authorities can refer to them. The observatories are publicly funded by the National Energy Agency, ADEME, the regional councils, mainly, and other public partners, and they are built to pool resources about calculating, monitoring emissions and energy production consumption. Also following in some regions, it can also go beyond energy and climate issues. It can be environmental issues in general. So it's a powerful tool to pool resources and give the cities the ability to have data that it would normally not be able to have unless they invest a lot of resources to calculate them or to have them calculated. You can see here on this map that there are 15 regional observatories in France about energy and climate. And in RAR, which is the National Network for Regional Agencies, we are working with 12 of them, and it's evolving every year. So in France, we have different levels, and so we have the national regulatory framework that is given by the state. The regions also have a big role in transitioning, because they are the leaders for environment transition, ecological transition. So they give objectives, programs, and funding. There also, you can also find at the different levels funding and incentives from ADEME, which is the National Energy Agency, the government, of course, the European Union. And then you have all the facilitators and intermediaries, which are local actors, regional actors, that can be public funded or can be private, that help local authorities into reaching their goals. So the regional energy agencies and observatories, which are members of RAR, are some of them. The air quality agencies, Justine, just after me, is part of one, and so she's going to present how it works in one region, which is Pays de la Loire. You can also have local energy agencies who will really help the local authority on which they depend on, urban planning agencies, NGOs, etc. So those facilitators, they provide data, they provide methodology, they provide resources, whether it be human resources or knowledge, and helping the local authorities to understand and to implement their strategies. So a lot has been said already since the beginning of the presentation about data, and the way we work in France is that there is a lot of databases of what we call raw data disseminated all over France. It can be national, it can be local, it can be private, it can be public. You've been commenting on this earlier. And so the challenge is to get this data structured and then accessible to local authorities. So that's what we do as observatories. We make sure that this data is full, complete, it's solid, and it's accurate. And then we transmit it, we transfer it to authorities through a database, or through, it can also be, so it can be either databases, it can be publication, what we call territorial GHG indicators. And of course, it's not only GHG, it's not only greenhouse gases, it can also be energy consumption, energy production, waste, etc. As far as energy and GHG indicators are concerned, the observatories propose to local authorities, so emission reports, calculation of renewable energy potentials, impact assessment of actions, trajectory management tools, and customized dashboards. And of course, all this seems to be a lot and very complete, and it depends on how the observatory is set, how much human resources they have, And like everything everywhere around the world, I suppose it's all a question of means and resources, funding we have to do this job. But this is what we can have at best. And you can see that we have both emission reports and impact assessment of actions. And as it was commented earlier, it's not always the same thing. Some of our agencies develop tools in order to help the local authorities understand the challenges. So this is aimed at both elected people, I'm sorry, the vocabulary, I'm missing the vocabulary, but and technical services. And this example, it's called Terristory, is a data service, so you can see all the data that is provided by the observatory in different fields, and people, the local authorities can actually choose which one they want to see. They can play, they can set a trajectory and see how it will impact their global emission. The word is, I'm missing the word. Their global emission numbers if they change such or such actions into their strategies. And so right now there are 6 regions in France that are using this tool, so it's not everywhere. And there is in France right now a big movement from the government in order to help local authorities access this data everywhere in France. So historically, and we've been starting by regional accompaniment, so local authorities were referring to regional observatories in order to have those numbers. And in the last 6 months, the government has been really pushing hard in order to see how they can optimize all this. So it's really helping, since we are talking about how the national governments can help, it's really helping right now that the government is really getting head down into providing data to all the local authorities in order for them to go faster towards the goals, climate goals. However, the challenge is that everything that has been set in the last years is not completely obliterated, and we work in cooperation. So I'll go through this because I've already commented it. So here you can see a graphic about how we try at RAR to help set coordination between the local level and national level. So each observatory, which is called OREC here on the slide, provide their own data. So we really try to make sure that the databases are interoperable and they can work together, and the database is then available for national level. We have been working also at the national level, of course, for to set down the methodology. As long as all the observatories were separate and without a specific coordination in between them, they had different methodologies, so it was not very different from one to another, but it was it was stopping the comparison of what is of how much of all the reporting at the national level. And it's been like now 2 years. The government has been really trying to know in detail what is going on in all the cities. And so we had to work on this, on what we call converging methodology to make sure the methodology is built in a collaborative way. It's open, it's accessible to all the observatories and other stakeholders. And we know how to calculate the GHG indicators. So this is a work in progress, but it's really an important step into building the coordination between national, regional, and local levels. We also try to promote innovation and to go further than just scope 1 and scope 2. We are working on scope 3 and on carbon footprint from the consumption point of view. And so some of our observatories are leaders in France on these methodologies. And the way we work is what some observatories do better for them, they share it inside the network. So all of the observatories can use the methodology, share, and go and advance further. And so, of course, we have some dreams. We'd like to have 100% reliable indicators to build systemic responses. We like to have fully open network database for knowledge treatment, and would like to have free data from different approaches, including what we call crowdsourcing, like bottom-up data, which is a challenge that was commented earlier in the earlier presentations. So there is still a lot of work to do ahead of us, but it's really going faster and faster, and we can tell that there is a lot of initiatives all around France between the different stakeholders. The main challenge is now how to articulate them, make sure we are efficient and we put our resources into the right direction altogether. But it's really going good. And I'm really glad to be a part of this webinar today, because I can see there is a lot to build with you guys at the European levels. So I'm eager to collaborate on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nadège, for this excellent presentation. It's really impressive how this whole system works in France. So let's now move directly to Justine Ledoux to explain a little bit more how, one of the regional agencies has worked directly with cities and how your work looks like. So Justine, over to you.
Thank you, Olga. And thank you so much for the invitation. Can you see my screen all right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So I'm Justine Ledoux. I work for an organization that is called Air Pays de la Loire, and I'm going to tell you more about how we monitor GHG emissions on the local level and how it is embedded in the national framework. So first of all, this is how we monitor GHG emissions and air quality in France. Our work is regulated by a law that is called the LAR law, which is the law on air and rational use of energy. And as a local nonprofit, we are part of a national federation of 17 accredited associations for the monitoring of air quality. I think this is a French specificity. The monitoring of air quality is done by nonprofits in each region. And then we are part of a national federation. So I work for Air Pays de la Loire, which is the accredited association in the French region of Pays de la Loire. It was created in 1980, and there are currently 35 people who work here. We work on air pollutants and GHG, and we work on both emissions and concentrations. And for that, we do measurement, monitoring, and modeling. Just briefly, I'm sure most of you know that the difference between emissions and concentrations. So emissions is the amount of pollution that is produced by a source for a definite amount of time. So basically, it's what comes out of a smokestack, out of a car. And this is what we calculate with a database that is called BASEMIS. And then the concentration is the amount of pollution in a volume of air. So basically, it's the air we breathe. And for that, it is monitored across the region by 32 stations of measurement. So BASEMIS is a database. It's a territory inventory on a communal scale of energy consumption, of greenhouse gas emissions, of atmospheric pollutants emission, and also renewable energy production. And this is the case of Pays de la Loire, but it can be replicated to all the regions in France. So basically, we do inventory of scope 1 and 2 emissions. And just to give you an idea of the amount of data that you can find in this inventory, you can find up to 400 million data. So basically, it's 13 years worth of data, over 1,000 cities data information, and it can go down to a very fine scale level. The data is available on the regional level, on the department level, on the county, EPCI for the French speakers, and down to the city town level. And just to give you an idea, it goes down to the type of cattle that you can find in the region, or the particle emissions of using your shoes or brewing beer. So it's very, very fine scale data. And this is how it is made. So we like to use the bee metaphor because one could say it's a bit tedious labor. So we collect the data from over several hundred sources. Then we process it using a national methodology. And once it is ready, I'm going to show you what it looks like. So this is the database for the Pays de la Loire region. So you can see that in our region, the main emission sector for GHG emissions is agriculture and road transportation. And down to the city level data, you can, so this is not the greater Nantes area. And you can see what it looks like. So you can see that in Nantes being a pretty urban area, the main GHG emission sector is road transportation, and agriculture only accounts for less than 2% of the emissions. So now that you've seen what it looks like, I'm going to show you how we use it. So it's available online. All our data is public, so it's available on our website. We also use it for modeling and modeling purpose, like let's say air quality prediction. And we provide data to Theo, which is part of the RAR network that Nadège just presented. So the data actually fits the data visualization platform that Nadège presented. And what we're interested in today is how we use it in assistance with territorial planning. So we use it for impact assessment. We use it for advisory work with climate change, urban planning, and mobility planning. So this is how we use it on the local level. So the first step is territorial impact assessment. So it actually provides you the characteristics of the territory. So what are your main emission sectors? Let's say you are in a city, chances are that your main emission sectors are going to be traffic, road transportation. If you are in a rural area, chances are that it's going to be agriculture. So you need to know your main emission sectors in order to plan accordingly. Second step is action planning and implementation. So we provide the fine-scale data of the impact of this planning on GHG emission reduction and air quality improvement. So it helps choosing which actions to implement, and it also helps define the costs and the benefits of these actions. And once it is done, we do follow-up and result assessment. So we determine the impact of the action, and we can redo the actual assessment that we did in the first place to see how it has improved since the action planning and implementation. And so this was on the local level, and this is how it is embedded in the national framework. So as I said, this is the example for the Pays de la Loire region, but we all work the same in the regional agencies. We follow a national framework as we are part of a national federation. And we use a national methodology from the CITEPA, and we have regular meetings and we share best practices. Also, we do not do national inventory, emissions inventory. It is done by the CITEPA, but we do local emissions inventory, and this inventory is reported to the National Federation and also to the High Council on Climate. So to conclude, this is a very big picture of how the local work is embedded in the national framework. So the fine-scale regional data supports the local level planning, which is embedded in the national level planning for climate neutral cities. And this fine-scale regional data is built using national methodology with a national community of practice. And it also feeds the High Council on Climate. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Justine. Of course, we wanted in a way to use this webinar to start a conversation, because not in every country, the structure looks like in France. And we have, countries where, in a way you have your own national frameworks and they work very well. In some countries, we know that, it's not there yet, and basically these structures are lacking, and this basically causes a lot of troubles also for cities to collect data, in order to do their monitoring and reporting exercise. So we would like to use the 10 minutes that we have left. However, if you are interest, it's like if we have a lot of questions and discussions, that of course we can go a little bit over time, and open up a discussion or a Q&A. So if anybody has a question, please feel free to unmute yourselves or raise your hand, and you can then ask the questions directly. Or you can put this in your question in the chat, and my colleagues Alice, Daniela, and Doris will try to facilitate and moderate the discussion with you. So I encourage you. I see that we have participants from Poland, from Germany, from Austria, I see, from France, perhaps, of course, from Turkey. Perhaps you have, some good examples, bad examples from your national frameworks.
Thank you. Thank you, Olga. Thank you very much. So I think that you are all very shy, but we have 10 minutes, and I would like to encourage you, as Olga said, if you have any question. But in the meantime, I have several questions also, because I think that it has been a total experience to listen from the different organizations, the cities here, about emissions accounting. I think that this has been a luxury for us also to learn from you. So I have one question, and we are going to start now from the end to the top. So I would like to ask, especially after listening the French example, to Nadej especially. Nadej, you mentioned that the observatories have the expertise on developing the inventories, collecting the data and everything, but do you think that you have the same level of expertise on the local level on France? Because we see in countries that there is a gap between this knowledge. So how do you see it in France?
Thank you for the question, Daniela. I think the big cities can develop the expertise because they have the means and the money to do so, but local cities can't, and that's why we are so we are defending this publicly funded system with regional observatories who are working hard in order to deliver data that is really accurate and is calculated the same way, and it's comparable through all the territories. And so right now we are working with the government on what is not the minimum, but what is the basement of data that local authorities should have in order to work on their climate goals.
Okay, perfect. I think that is a process. Now, as you said, probably small cities may have a little more challenges, so it's good to also to work with you. And I think that is amazing having the territorial work also in the field, now to work closely with the cities. Thank you, Nadej. Justine, I have one question from you, because you mentioned also that because after listening to you, I think that you have very well structured the monitoring reporting scheme in Pays de la Loire. I have one question regarding also again how do you work with the cities? So which departments of the cities do you work with, and how do you involve them to be active participants of this experience?
Actually, thank you for the question. Mainly it's cities that come to us because, in France, there are laws mainly called PCAET, which is Air, Climate, and Air, Climate, Energy Action Plan. And if you are above a city or a county that's above 20,000 people, you have by the law to actually act on climate, energy, and and air quality. So actually it's cities that come to us mostly because they need this data to be able to plan accordingly. And so this data is public, it's free, and it really helps the city to plan accordingly.
Okay, perfect, Justine. So good that you have a lot of cities working with you. That is amazing. I think that having this structured way and a centralized centralized place to collect the data and calculate makes everything much easier. Thanks for that, Justine. Is there any other question in the chat? Olga, can you help me find it?
Yes, there is a question from Sonja Steinberger, who would like to learn a bit more about the methodologies used by the different cities, calculate and how they calculate the transport emissions attributable to a certain city.
Yeah, probably Chaglar from Izmir can tell you, because it's a big city, 5 million inhabitants. Chaglar, can you help us understanding how do you calculate the
and also this is the area that I know most, probably. You know, we work with Daniela together. So okay, there is a couple of approaches to calculate the transportation, and none of them are correct, by the way. Like you know, it's an approach. So we don't know, because the traffic is moving, so we cannot know. But one approach is the number of cars. Okay, so we know the number of cars registered in Izmir, for example. So through that, and then we know the breakdown of the car type, I mean the vehicle type, so that we can have an estimate of the yearly emissions. One, and the second one is the fuel. Okay. So and we assume that most of the almost all the fuel is consumed in transportation area, and we have a fuel breakdown, like how much gasoline, how much diesel, and how much LPG so is consumed. From that we can have an estimate of the emissions from the transports as well. And when we compare these two, it is very close to each other. I mean, not exactly the same, it cannot be the same. So the approaches, because there are a lot of cars registered for the other provinces in Izmir, and they are running in the city. So we don't know that. And the third approach is interesting, and we collaborate with ICLEI and Google as well. So they are also giving us a good estimate of the emissions from the transport as well, and also gives a good estimates of the transport modes, which is not possible with the normal calculations. So that's why I really recommend you to check those as well. So I mean, more or less we use emissions, and it's around like 20 to 25% of the all emissions. I don't know, Daniela, would you like to add some more?
No, Charles, I think that is very important also to clarify that from a methodological perspective, the GPC and the CCAP methodology from the Covenant of Mayors, they define the different ways to account emissions from transport. There are two perspectives: the top-down approach, which is the one that most cities use, like the one you have described, and also the bottom-up approach, which is having more detailed data. And for this, we need information from national governments, but also from other sources of data like Google, for example. So we will share that information with the participants afterwards, Olga, because also the Capacities program is doing a repository of training materials and activities. So we will share that information on the methodological aspects. And I think that we have 2 more minutes, and just to do a final question, because I don't want to leave this far, I would like to come back to Arminel from CDP, and thank you, Arminel, for sharing this. Based on the experience that you've had with the cities reporting, I was a little surprised when you mentioned that only around 38% of the cities, 38% of the cities have not reported an inventory at all, or an old inventory. Why do you think is that? And also, do you think that there's a need for a more frequent reporting of inventories to really have an advance in climate action?
Yeah, thank you, Daniela. So to your first question of why there are so many cities reporting who still potentially don't have GHG emissions data, we definitely find that there's the geographical spread of cities that can access this data is not even. So we have a lot of cities reporting to us from all across the world, and there tends to be certain regions where a lot of this data is just not easily available. We don't have these brilliant national data sets that can be downscaled to local authorities like you have in France, for example. And I think we also have a lot of cities that are reporting to us for the first time. So it may just be, you know, they're really right at the start of their climate action journey, and they've got everything to start doing. So I think there's a number of reasons. Partly, yeah, we definitely find that the geographical spread of data availability is not equal across the world. And that's something that I think we would be really pushing to kind of get more equitable access to data for all cities across the world. And then to your second question about the value of reporting emissions data more regularly, I think the value of reporting and gathering emissions data for cities more regularly is that they can start to track their progress and can start to see the impact of their climate actions. And, you know, as we move towards 2030 and then move towards 2050, this is going to become more important to understand, you know, are cities' actions resulting into the emission reductions that we hope and plan that they are. However, we know it's a balance. So we know that there's a lot of resource. It takes a lot of resource to develop an inventory every year. So we're not necessarily advocating for, you know, updating your emissions inventory every year if the city's developing that data themselves at a local level. But I think where the national players can really support here is if they're collecting that national data on an annual basis, if they can downscale that down to city level and provide that data to cities on an annual basis, help, you know, freeing up the city's time, meaning they don't have to go and collect all this data themselves, then that would be really valuable.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I mean, I think that yes, you have made a very good point on the need to, how can I say, to invent the data. I think that it's important to go back and find other sources on a national level, regional level that could help also cities in advancing. So I think that we are almost done. Thank you very much for
Daniela,
your time.
there is one more question.
Yes, sorry, I didn't see it. Yes.
So it's about the calculation from ferry, you know,
okay.
Transport from the ferry. Very easy to calculate for us because we know the consumption. So because the ferry, we have a company, municipal company runs the ferries in the Bay of Izmir. So we know how much fuel they're using it. Okay, that's what it is from like the bottom to you know, top approach. So we can easily calculate the emissions. But for the airports, we can only calculate through the jet fuel sales, okay, in the city, and then some percentage of jet fuel used in the city, and that's all we can calculate. And airport is also considered as a building, then it is among the buildings, so we cannot calculate it individually for the airport. We calculate it as a part of the building stocks, and for the transport part, we can use jet fuel sales in Izmir to calculate the emissions caused by the you know, the planes.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you very much, Charlotte, for this clarification. But as I said, we are going to send information about the emissions calculation. We are going to share it. And just to close, because we are here in these capacities talking about carbon neutrality, and I will just to finalize one more question to Jurgis. Jurgis, you mentioned the role of the net zero cities, no? So I think that most of the net zero cities have already their inventory very well structured, at least to have established those ambitious targets. But can you tell us a little bit, and just to finalize, how they are planning to report this ambition of these 50 of these carbon neutrality by 2030? What are the plans on the net zero cities journey?
Yeah, thank you, Daniela, yes, for this question. I think it's really a good question, and I would say maybe it's a challengeable question. Again, maybe I would like to mention that, yes, it's quite ambitious number, 112 participants in this Net Zero City project, and also, yes, in this European Union mission as well. If we are talking about the current practice, I would say that, yes, this is a cities with completely different experience. As you have mentioned that, yes, definitely, there are cities maybe who are more experienced, who are more advanced. Yes, they currently report maybe either to the CDP ICLE track, they disclose their climate or environmental data, either they're reporting to the My Covenant platform, for example. Of course, it's possible to see the report also like using different other approaches. Of course, we are talking about cities who are just beginner, so they do not have such a big experience. But what I would like to mention, nevertheless, it doesn't depend maybe from the experience. All of them are very enthusiastic, very highly motivated, and that's why I would like to mention that, yes, currently they're trying to use, yes, they're working with the city advisor, they're trying to use all these resources, all these tools, all these approaches that I presented that are available and that are storage for everyone, yes, at the Net Zero City knowledge repository, at the resource and deliverable section. So they're actively using those of them to improve their knowledge, yes, to maybe to increase their experience, and definitely, yes, to go through, to move all together, to experience between all of them, and somehow again maybe to build on existing experience, and definitely to develop how to learn from each other, maybe how to work with data, how to manage data more effectively, more efficiently. And I believe that each of them also are very enthusiastic, yes, to achieve this goal by 2030.
Okay, thank you, Jurgis. I think that also it's important also what you mentioned, that apart from the cities in the mission, all the experience that they are doing, other cities can learn also from them. So we will be attentive on that. So Olga, thank you very much also for this. So I give you the floor so you can close the session for today.
Yes, thank you very much to all our excellent panelists for your interesting presentations. Just to let our participants know, we have recorded the meeting and we will also make the slides available. So if you want to take your time to go through all this material, it will be possible. But I also wanted to encourage you that if you are working in your country on, on exactly this, a GHG monitoring and reporting exercise, and you would be interested in maybe, getting to know how it's done in different countries, and maybe, even networking. Yes, we are in a way trying, to arrange that and learn more about different national frameworks, across Europe. So feel free to reach out. I pasted my email in the chat, so you can use that. So thank you, and I see that Alice Daniela pasted her email as well. So thank you very much once again, and only maybe in my last final words, I just wanted to present very briefly. Sorry, I'm presenting the chat. Sorry, I wanted to present that there will be an upcoming meeting also organized by the Capacities project. It's one of our Transnational Cities Mission Alliance webinars. This time it will be on multi-level governance, a prerequisite for successful cities mission implementation. If you're interested in this topic, then please join us on 20th of June at 10 CET, and the registration goes through the utpartnership.eu website. And if you give me a second, I will now paste a link in the chat in case, yes, you would like to register and you're interested in participating in this event as well. So the link goes here, and thank you very much for participation. Have a lovely rest of the day and good start to the week. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.